This is the third video in our emotional intelligence series for relationships. This concept is keep calm and communicate, mastering emotional responses in our marriage. And so I put this one in because a lot of times in our relationship, we get so high emotionally and caught up in a scenario that hooks us and we just cannot get out of that situation emotionally. We feel so caught up in that scenario to where we say and do things that leave emotional scars. But the truth is, do emotional things when our emotions get super high. And I think people usually go two ways. One is you can go to the idea of silence and not talk to your partner and be really heady and not and disconnected in that way. Or emotionally, you can just be out of order, just really saying and doing things that you don't want to do. And so I think people end somewhere on one of those two things, ways of being, and it makes it so hard because, again, your relationship ends up being scarred. And you could say and do things that are hurtful emotionally to the other person that even though they might forgive you, it's definitely on the minds that it has happened. And so in those scenarios, we want to try to stay away from that as much as possible. And so I want to try to help you to do that with our topic today. If you think about what's gone on, what happens in our marriages that escalates things is one person says something and then the next person doesn't know how to manage that or isn't okay with that scenario, and then the next person may reply again because the way that they managed the responder managed it doesn't show that they care, or it's not enough response, or the change isn't the way that they want it to be. And so there's a couple of things I think that go into us having a hard time in those scenarios. One is we have this belief that says, I think that people should do something different for me to be okay. And that belief is hard. We have to really work hard on that. We'll talk about it in a second. And then the other one is I think that we get hooked. The scenario that's being presented to us in this moment reminds our bodies of a different scenario that maybe isn't even present in this moment. And so we get so frustrated that our eyes can only see what we're frustrated about and not really what's going on in our relationship. And so those things really tack onto us and make it difficult for us to continue to do our relationship. It just keeps escalating if we don't know how to deal with the anger that comes out of those scenarios. Even though one person might seem calm or not necessarily do things the same way as the other person emotionally, it still could build on resentment and keep things going longer than they have to go. And so there's so much scarring that can happen. And I think when we look at that, we want to work on it for that reason. We don't need those extra things in our relationships. So what is an emotional, what I prefer to call hook? What is that? Well, basically what it is that you have experienced some sense of power control, abandonment, or significance factor in your life, which we all have. You have experienced something that your body is minded about. And when it's reminded about that, it hooks onto you and pulls you back into let's be safe mode. And the let's be safe mode causes you to catch and fight, basically. It puts you into fight or flight mode. And now you're reacting to that scenario. Now, what I'm not trying to do is invalidate that there's a concern. What I am trying to do is validate that the emotional hooks that happen in those moments can be bigger than what the moment is, right? And so we need to know this. The other thing is we have that definition that happens that we base our life on, and you'll have to really weigh into this and start thinking about this. In fact, put this in the comments if you have a challenging time with this, or even if you don't have a challenging time, I'd like to hear from you because you probably have the recipe for how to undo this scenario. The idea is I need somebody else to do something else for me to be okay. And so we really get to, in a sneaky way, we're trying to punish other person for not doing the things that would make us feel better or would go our way, the way that we think things should go. And so it is really difficult, but those are the two areas that I want you to really start looking at and identify what's happening. In your last argument or your last emotional, challenging argument, what was going on for you, and what if you were to take out your partner and say, it isn't their fault, I'm just going to say this for the sake of me assessing the scenario. What's the hook that I have in that scenario, or what's the belief that I think that they should be doing that would make me feel better? And I want you to really be able to look at those things and see how you get your emotional reaction to be high in those moments. So Some of the common things that I know hook people are financial stressors, lack of appreciation, or not feeling wanted, which might be the same kind of thing, or not feeling seen, right? And so in those moments, why are those three things so common? Well, if we go back to the idea that there's significance, control, and abandonment as an issue, we fight over those things anyways. And those are the facades for what's actually behind everything. You might say, I don't care about significance, control, and abandonment. Those aren't my things, but I do care about money. Well, money happens to be some of those things. It happens to be probably related to power, control, probably related to significance. And depending on your scenario, it could even be abandonment. And so if you take each one of those scenarios, not being appreciated, feeling unseen, all those situations will start creating a hook for you in those moments. And it's really important for us to understand what our emotional hooks are so that we can start managing them a little bit better. Well, how do you manage them? So the first thing is try to stay on balance. If your emotions get up too high and your thoughts are low, then you're going to be off balance. It's not going to be good. The second thing is if your thoughts go up too high and your emotions drop out, you're not on balance. It's not going to be good. And so trying to stay on balance as much as possible, trying to get to a place where your emotions and your thoughts are in that place. The first situation, remember that how you think about things creates how you feel about things. And so as much as your belief system is, hey, my partner, if they can do it better, I will be okay, that belief system is causing you sometimes an emotional hook. And so we need to be able to redo those definitions. So those are some of the ideas that you can have in your mind to try to stay on balance. But it's useful in the moments, once the moments happen, to really try to pause and take a breath and observe what's going on with you before you continue on. The more that you can have that meter inside of yourself, the less damage you're going to do emotionally. And then start putting yourself back in control. Nobody can cause you to do something. And I think some people use I statements. I'm not really a big fan of I statements, but I am a big fan of you understand how much control you have over your life and how much you might be giving away whenever you have the emotional outbursts that you're having. And then it's possible not to use this as a weapon, but to really be able to give yourself some kind of time out to where you can take a break from whatever the moment is and walk away. And then later on, try to go back and have a productive conversation as much as possible. So I want to give you some practices that are going to help you to improve your emotional management. And I would like for you guys to do these together. You can do them daily or create some kind of routine that works for you. But mindfulness and meditation, so just an overall emotional awareness, and awareness that I've talked about before in some of our other series, is awareness is one of our superpowers. And if we can be more emotionally aware of what's going on, these are my thoughts, these were my experiences, this is what created my emotion that's ending in the behavior. So you might notice the behaviors first. I even notice the thoughts. This is what I thought. But what are the emotions that are going on in that scenario? And so mindfulness and meditation really help with those scenarios. And then can you guys check in with each other on a regular basis where you are able to discuss some of the feelings and stressors? If your partner doesn't ever have a chance to express what's wrong with them or what's happening in their life, then it's just getting bottled up, and it's a recipe for us to have more outbursts than anything else. What if we were to be able to have scenarios that weren't necessarily confrontational, but instead discussions about what we see and what we're feeling, right? Those scenarios aren't guided towards trying to tell each other what's wrong with each other or try to tell each other what's wrong with the behaviors of the other person. That's not, you're going to create a bad scenario for you if you do it that way. Instead, if you do a check-in to where you say, these have just been my feelings and my stressors, and this is not me trying to manipulate. We're just trying to discuss and lay all those things out on the table. And then some emotion journaling, just being able to reflect on the emotional experiences that you have and try to learn from them. What's going on with me, and can I get a little bit better at these situations? I encourage you guys to do those practices together and try to help each other to build this scenario where we're not having emotional outbursts in our relationship. Just to recap, the importance of us being able to manage our emotions is that we are going to leave some scars in our relationship if we can't get these things under wraps. And so it's really important for us to be able to control ourselves so that we have the relationship that we want. And that's a big time goal, is for us to be able to think about, instead of what the moment is right now, what do I want in my relationship and how am I going to create that right now? So if you can think of that, it's going to help you to keep communication that is calm and constructive, and you're going to be in a good space. All right. So I want you guys to work on some of the things that I gave you here today. Also, subscribe. Make sure that you are sharing it with your friends and your family, because they need help. Even if they don't talk to you about it, they shouldn't be talking to you about it. They still are going to need some of that. And then if any of these conversations that we've had in this last series is helpful, please put your experiences down in the comment section. And if you have questions, also let's have some talks about that. Our marriage communication masterclass is available to you to start now, where you're going to get 3 with me. The most important thing is that you will get 3 hours where you're going to learn how to do marriage communication in a way that is going to boost your relationship connection, help you to be moving together in your relationship, and then also give you guidance. And we'll talk to you soon.